When I create an image of star trails, I don't make a very single long exposure. Instead, I'll take a sequence of shorter exposures and then blend them together with Photoshop using the lighten blend mode. For the lighting of the foreground, I found that using a constant low output light source works much better than light painting with a flashlight. To take these images in the field, I'll put my camera in continuous shooting mode, set the exposure to 30 seconds or so, attach a locking cable release, push the button, walk away, take a nap or whatever, and then let the exposures happen. Once you've taken all your images and copied them onto your computer, you'll open them up in either Photoshop or Bridge or Lightroom or whatever you use. And in this case, I'm going to be using Lightroom because that's what I normally use, but I'll also show you how to do this in Bridge. Now I've already loaded my images from this session into Lightroom, and I've put them into a collection so that we're only looking at these particular images. Now I started taking these images when it was only twilight, and so the sky wasn't completely dark. If I were to take all of the images that I took and then put them in Lightroom and put them together with blend mode, the light from the sky when it was not dark would blow out everything else. So I need to find out where it was completely dark and then start from there. And so somewhere around here is a good starting point. Before I load these images into Photoshop, I want to make sure that each one of them has the same raw settings applied to them. In particular, I want to make sure the white balance matches from one image to the other, because if it doesn't, the colors are kind of going to get screwed up. So I'll take the white balance here and drag it over to like 4,000 or so, which is what I usually use for stars. And maybe I'll adjust the tint as well, but only a little bit. Aside from that, that's the only change I'm going to make in the develop module for Lightroom. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the settings that I just applied to that one image and copy them over to another set of images. In this case, I've grabbed like 7 of them, and I'm going to synchronize just the white balance and hit that button there. And I'll go ahead and do that for the entire sequence of images. So I click the first image, shift click on the last image, hit the sync settings button again, and then all of the images get the same settings applied to them. Now I'm going to scroll through this group of images and see what I have to deal with. In this case, there's an airplane that's flying through. And there's a car down below that we're going to need to get rid of. And there's also this red light that gets put onto the arch that we're going to need to take care of. But we'll take care of all that stuff in Photoshop, not Lightroom. So I'm going to select a group of images here, only like 14 at a time. And I'm going to right click on this selection, go to Edit In, and then click on Open as Layers in Photoshop. And so what this is going to do is going to give me a Photoshop document that has 14 different layers in it. This may take a little time depending on the speed of your computer, the speed of your hard drive, and stuff like that. In Photoshop, there are a number of different blending modes you can use on your layers. In this case, we're going to use the Lighten blend mode. What the Lighten blend mode does is it looks at each pixel and then looks at each individual layer and finds the brightest instance of that pixel in all the layers, and then we'll use that bright pixel as the one that gets displayed. So as you might imagine, as a star is moving throughout a sequence of images, now that star is going to be the brightest thing around it, but it's going to move from one pixel to another as time goes on. And so as you blend these images together, the stars are going to appear to be trailed, and that's what we want. Now while Photoshop is doing its thing here, I'm going to go and take a moment and show you how you would do this from Adobe Bridge. So once Bridge opens, I navigate to the folder that contains all of my images. And I'm going to select the same 14 images that I selected before. Starting with that one. And there's 14. And so next what I'm going to do is click on Tools, Photoshop, Load Files into Photoshop Layers. And this is going to do the exact same thing that my process from Lightroom does. So now Photoshop is done with its process of loading all these images into different layers. And I'm going to rearrange my workspace a little bit just to make it easier to deal with. So now what I have to do is select all of the layers except for the bottom one. We're going to leave the bottom image opaque. Now I go to the blend mode and select lighten, and there we have our star trails. The problem is there are a few things in this image that we don't want, like this red light on the arch, this other red light on the arch. Down here at the bottom, there's the lights from a car that drove by while I was taking these exposures. And I'm looking for airplane streaks now. There is one, and it shows up in like 3 different lines because it was blinking. And I'm going to keep scrolling around looking for things I need to replace. Here's another airplane over here. Something else to look out for are hot pixels. Now these are cases where randomly you will get a single pixel that will have a very bright value, like this one right here. And we can get rid of that too. So we're going to go through here one layer at a time and look for the things that we need to replace. When you're trying to find out which layers need to have things replaced from them, you can toggle the visibility of each layer by shift-clicking on the eyeball that is next to the thumbnail in the layer panel. So in this first image, I'm looking for that airplane, not seeing it there. Not seeing the airplane over there. Switch to the next one, and so forth. Just looking for airplanes. Now I see one. To get rid of this streak from the airplane, what I'm going to do is hit the J key, which will bring up my spot healing brush tool. And I need to make sure I have the right layer selected. And since airplanes are straight lines, they're really easy to get rid of. To make a straight line with a brush in Photoshop, you click on one end, shift click on the other, and you have a straight line. So click and shift click, and the airplane's gone. So I'm not seeing anything else in this area that I need to get rid of in this layer, so I'll go to the next. And in this one I'm seeing 2 airplanes, and for some reason I didn't see this other airplane in the previous image. Anyway, I'll get rid of it from this image. So click and shift click. Click and shift click. And then scroll around and look for other things that we need to remove. And I'm going to be looking for a hot pixel because I know I saw one up in the top of this arch. I just need to find which layer it's in. I'll toggle through each one until I find it. And there it is. So once again, I'll take my spot healing brush tool and click on it, and the hot pixel is now gone. And also in this image, I have the light from a car, and I will get rid of that. I'll make my brush a bit bigger, and then click, shift click, and now that one's gone. And I think that car may have been in another layer. There it is. I'll do the same thing here, and I'll look for it elsewhere. There's a red light here that I need to take care of. Now in the case of a stray light on the arch, I'm not going to use the spot healing brush tool because that would just give me information that I do not want in those pixels. What I'm going to do instead is just darken that entire area, and that'll make sure that it will not show up in my final composite image. So I take a normal brush, about 30% opacity, black, and paint over that area. So that gives you an idea of how I would deal with different types of problems with stray light. So I've gone ahead and done that in all of the layers, and we're skipping ahead and now looking for anything else that we might want to get rid of. One of the byproducts of using this particular method for making the star trails is that if you have a foreground object that has been lit, often you're going to have a high ISO when you're taking these images, so you're going to have a lot of noise in your foreground. But by combining these images in the lighten blend mode, it smooths out a lot of that noise. So as I toggle the individual layers, you can kind of see how there's more noise in the foreground here. But then when I enable all of them and I have the lighten blend mode applied, the noise has been cleared up quite a bit. So now I've done everything I wanted to do with this particular sequence of images. And to finish up, I'm going to go into the layer menu and flatten it. And that just combines all of the layers into one. And then I will save this file. So that takes care of merging together 14 different files, but I had like 86 of them. But that's not a problem. I can go through my images, and again, like 14 at a time, and do the same thing. And then I'll have 5 different groups of 14 images, and then one group that has 16 images in it. And so once I've combined all that, I will have 6 images with star trails in them. And after that, I'll take these 6 images and I will merge them together in Lightroom in the exact same way. Load them up as layers, use the lighten blend mode, and it's done. So now I'm back in Lightroom, and I'm going to filter out all the raw files and just look for the TIFF files that have the star trails in them. Here they are. So select them all, and then right-click, and then edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And so Photoshop will load these 6 files into different layers. I don't need to go through each individual layer and clean each one of them up because I've already done that when I went and I made the initial StarTrail images. So now they're all loaded, select all but the bottom one and hit the lighten blend mode. And there we have 86 files merged together into one StarTrail image. So we'll go in there and flatten it again and save the file. And now we're going to go back to Lightroom. And here we have our final image. So thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you learned something, or if you didn't, if you have questions, go ahead and ask me in the comments down below. Also, if there's something else that you'd like me to show you, let me know and I can make other videos.